All right, let's move into handling objections. Oh, we'll start on page 58. Here's what I'll tell you about objections. You're going to hear them a lot less than you think. And you're going to hear, when you do hear them, you're going to hear a lot less of them than you think. Common sense would tell me that if I'm going out and I'm going to take over this multi-thousand-dollar asset from this seller, and I'm not giving them any money, that I would hear all kinds of objections and reasons, questions from them. Common sense would tell me that they're going to run me through the ringer. Wouldn't common sense tell you that? Eh? It's reasonable to expect, isn't it? Isn't it? Okay, well, let's find out from reality. John, have you got a microphone? Scott, you got a microphone?
Go.
Huh? You got a microphone? Okay, John, you tell me. Actually, you may be a bad person to ask because you really don't go out in the field and deal with a seller, do you?
What's the field?
Huh?
What's the field?
You know, I want to know just exactly what it is you do to earn your money.
Very little. I learned from the best.
Okay, all right. That's a good answer. All right, but when you actually did do this stuff and you went out in the field, how often do you hear these objections that are going around in your head that you know you're going to hear?
Oh, they come up all the time.
Uh-huh.
You want an objection?
Yeah, I want you to answer it. I want you to tell me the truth. Do they?
Well, yeah, people do object.
Yeah, I
You know.
certainly do.
But it's, probably the biggest thing that we can do, or the biggest hurdle we have to overcome in doing these kind of deals is educating the seller as to what is working in today's market for trying to sell a house quickly.
How do you do that?
Well, what I do is I tell them, they say, well, I just want an all-cash deal. Well, we all want all-cash deals,
Yeah.
but it's not happening in today's market.
Right?
With the economy the way it is, with the banks holding all the money, they made all the money. I mean, we gave them all this money. They're just so big, fat cats there that they just don't want to give up the money. So I try and steer them to showing them that the banks made all this money. Why can't you become the bank and you make money? And then I talk to them as turning them into a bank to finance the property
owner
to me,
financing deals.
or lease optioning it to me,
Yeah.
and they get some money at the end if there's equity.
Well, how often do you hear the objections that are in this book? For example, the first one is, what if the tenant tears up my house?
They bring that up very often, and of course we have to come back with our argument that don't worry about it. Number one, first off, they're responsible for the house. They got to take care of the maintenance and the repairs and all that stuff.
The tenant buyer, you mean?
The tenant buyer.
Yeah.
So if the tenant buyer does do damage to the property and they do leave the property, it's not a problem. Just call us, we'll do it again. In fact, we'll have a better chance even at getting somebody quicker because we have a lot more people wanting to move into properties that are looking for properties that need some TLC that they can handle themselves.
All right. Well, I got a much faster answer for that.
Good.
Well, first of all, guys, we got different kinds of deals on page 58 alone. One is if you intend to stay in it as a sandwich lease, and another one if you intend to exit, and it's two totally different answers. Before I do that, though, Scott, how often do you hear this objection? What if the tenant tears up my house?
Yeah, we get that pretty consistently. My response is definitely similar to John's, but I tell them, first of all, obviously we can't guarantee against that, but the way that we qualify our buyers is night and day different than a typical tenant. So we're getting people that have a vested interest in the property, they have skin in the game, they're putting money down, and they're making payments every month towards the purchase of the property. They are responsible for all maintenance and upkeep of the home, and their intention is to buy it at some point, so they take care of it as such. And and those kinds of people, the psychology of a tenant buyer versus a simple tenant is just that night and day different. And so we just don't see those kinds of scenarios. They're not landlords. You're not dealing with tenants. And just like John said, if at some point down the road the buyer does end up moving out, we just tell them to give us a call back and we'll do it again.
All right, let me give you my answers. What are the tenant, all right, first of all, do we know we're going to be in a sandwich lease situation before we ever get into the house? Okay, if I know I'm going to lease option it and then sublease it out, and we were to get that question, I'd say, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. It's my responsibility and it's in writing, it's in your agreement. Is that not the right answer? Yes. That's the truth. That's the end of that discussion. Frankly, both of these guys talk way too much to suit me. All right? But that's their personality, isn't it? Yeah. And give them time. Give them a few more years and they can be just as big an asshole as me. Little practice. All right? And I know Scott's fast approaching that point. I don't know about John. All right, on an axe deal. On an axe deal, are you staying in the deal? All right, so why don't we just tell it like it is? Pretty much is what it says right in your book there. It's possible, but remember, I'll collect several $1,000s from them, and you get to approve them before we let them in the house, and they're not normal tenants. They're like owners. In my experience, they don't damage the house, but it's always possible. So you must accept that risk for us to move forward. If you have a better option, it is your choice. Should we go forward? And then I say, if that happens, if they move out and they've done damage, call me. I'll put somebody else in there, and we'll lease option it out as is. And that's it. So, by the way, if you're doing an axe deal, can you make them any promises a tenant will or will not do anything? No. How would you know? You can't. We'll find the best quality person we can to put in there. You'll approve them, and they'll have a financial stake in the property, and our experience shows that those kind of folks don't tear up houses. That's all you can do. Scott, so far, have we had any deals we've lost because of that objection?
No. Mm-mm.
No? You, John?
None I can remember.
Okay.
No.
By the way, guys, John and Stephanie have volunteered to those who wish to join them at 8 o'clock in the morning to spend an hour before I arrive talking to you about the way they run their business with autopilot from afar. They're literally an example of people who have a business 1,000 miles away from where they're living. In fact, it's probably 1,200 miles away from where they're living.
Yeah, closer
and
to.
are very successful at it. Plus, they'll also take your Q&A the entire hour if you would like to join them in the morning. And we will get that on tape starting at 8 o'clock. So how many of you would like to join them in the morning so they're not here by themselves? All right? So pretty much all of you. All right. On the next page, how do I know I can trust you? Here's my answer. Longer one in the book. My answer is very simple. Do you have any reason to believe you can't trust me? By the way, do you notice that I always answer a question with a question? When I answer a question with a question, now it behooves them to come up with the answer. Do you have any reason to believe you can't trust me? Because if you do, we probably shouldn't do this transaction. Wouldn't you agree? And of course, they don't have any reason that they can't trust me. So the worst they can say is, well, I don't know, we just met. Well, you are correct. But obviously, until I put somebody in this house and do what I say, I don't get paid, and I'm not working for free. So if you don't think I'm going to do what I say, please don't sell me your house. Wouldn't you agree? And they can't come up with an answer because there isn't any. There isn't any. That's my answer. Now, if it's an axe deal, you don't need to worry about trusting me because I'm not making you payments. I'm going to find you a tenant buyer and you're going to approve them. So you can ask them that question when I find them for you. Got it? Do we have it? Yes, sir. All right. How are we going to get good at this objection stuff? Well, you ought to practice a little bit before you go in the house first. Wouldn't you think that'd be a good idea? Have somebody grill the crap out of you and see how you hold up. You better get beat up before you go in the house rather than getting in there and getting beat up. All All right, how do I know when my mortgage payments are made? On a sandwich lease situation, easy. I can either pay you direct or I'll pay your bank, whichever you prefer. Now watch this, guys. If they have no equity in the house, I will not send them a check for the rent. I will require that I have the ability to pay the bank direct, or I'll make a payment to an escrow company, and I'll find one for them on Google that will collect my rent and make their payment for them and send us both a statement, and frankly, I prefer to do that anyway. Now, the escrow company's doing the accounting, doing the end-of-the-year statements, and now they know that the escrow company is collecting, so that if they don't get the payment made, the escrow company will notify them immediately. There's escrow companies anywhere in America. In fact, they don't even have to be in your state to do this. It costs about $100 to set it up and about $10 a month. If there's room, I make them pay the $10 a month. If there's not, I just absorb it. It's worth it. So you got it? Go to Google and type in escrow companies in your city first. You won't have any trouble finding one. And there's national firms that do it. So, how do I know when my mortgage payments are made? If it's a sandwich lease, well, I'm going to pay the bank direct, or I'll pay it into an escrow company and let them pay it. You decide which. If they have a bunch of equity in the property, I got no problem paying the seller direct, because I'm not worried about them not making the underlying payment. I will tell you, you do not want to send a seller money when they have no equity in the property, because it's only a matter of time before they take your check and spend it and not make the payment, thinking that they'll make it up later, and later never comes, and the next thing you know, they're behind. It's only human nature. So if they got a bunch of equity, I kind of hope they take my money and then don't make the payment, because then I'm taking away all the equity they have that I owe them, because they didn't honor their agreement. I don't mind paying them at all. Axe deal is not applicable because I'm not making the payments. Tenant buyer will make the payment. Why don't you make the next 3 payments? Next payment instead of 2 or 3 months from now. If it's a sandwich lease, I'm always going to get 2 or 3 months before my first payment is due, because I need time to find a tenant buyer that will pass my strict standard and qualify to buy your house. You do want me to find a reliable tenant who will eventually buy, don't you? Yep. If I give you any lip, so you're saying if I don't make the next payment due, we can't do business? I have never had one refuse that I can remember, if they're current. If they're current, I'm always going to get 2 or 3 payments. In fact, Scott, in the case of Axe down here at the bottom, we just tell them that we're going to collect, and we just tell them that your rent will be due 30 days after we close the lease purchase with a tenant buyer that you approve. Does everybody understand that? Hello, do you understand that? Everybody got it? Okay, so therefore, when the tenant buyer closes, the attorney collects the first month's rent along with the rest of the deposit and the attorney's fees, and cuts us a check for everything but the attorney's fees. So we literally get the first month's rent. I have no problem telling the seller, we're going to keep that first month's rent as part of our fee for finding and screening this quality tenant buyer for you that you must approve before we put them in this house. Scott, has anybody objected to you on that yet?
After the fact, I had someone try to wiggle out of it, but no, it's never been a problem.
Do they even bring it up?
Yeah.
Do they even bring it up?
No.
No, because it's a condition of your purchase. It's not something we're negotiating about. I'm not asking their permission. Can I please keep the first payment? No. I'm saying this is how it works. And it is how it works. All right.
Ron, and
Yeah.
basically by doing that, we're doing like we do with subject twos, where a lot of times with subject two, we get sellers to actually pay us to take the deed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically doing the same thing with the lease option, where you're keeping the first month's rent or 2 months,
Well,
whatever.
no, I'm not, because that money comes from the buyer, not the seller. And guys,
True,
please do not take money from sellers.
correct.
I do not want to be defending you if you take money from sellers and then something goes wrong with his deal later. The seller is the wrong place to get a check from. And I'll promise you, some of them will write you a check to get out of this deal, but unless, of course, you're going to pay off their loan. If you're going to pay off the loan, you can take all they'll give you. But if that loan is going to stay in their name, and after this transaction is done, and they give you a check, you are not only morally obligated to make sure it goes the way it's supposed to, but you may even be legally obligated, depending on how good of an attorney they got. So do not take money from sellers, please. Stay out of trouble. Get all your money from the buyers. Besides, I would caution you that if you don't have a license and you start taking money from sellers, what does that look like? It really looks like they are paying you to provide one of the 7 functions of real estate that requires a license. All right. Why do you want such a long-term lease option agreement? In the case of a sandwich lease, your answer is because sometimes it takes a tenant buyer a while to find a qualified or to get qualified for several reasons. They may need time to raise a down payment or clear up a credit problem, and I just don't want to be in a position where I'm forcing myself to get somebody qualified in a few months. It takes time. Besides, how long do you want me to make your payments and be responsible for all your repairs? Sellers say, well, as long as possible. Well, if that's the case, you're in. And if that's the response, go for at least a 5-year term. And a 5-year term now is, remember, on a sandwich, not on an axe. What's the minimum term when they're overfinanced? 10 years, okay? What if I'm doing an axe deal when it's not overfinanced, and yet I intend to assign my lease option? Nope. Not going to be 10 years. If I'm buying a $200,000 house for $200,000, I don't need a 10-year lease. Why? Because I don't have to give it time for the equity to catch back up. It's already right at market value. So I don't need 10 years. I don't have any leverage. I don't have any reason to even ask for 10 years, frankly. And besides, what do I care? I'm going to sign my lease option agreement. What do I care? I'm going to get the same amount of money whether it's 5 years or 10 years, aren't I? So if I can tell you right now, a buyer could care less. 5 years is as good as 10 years. 5 years is a long time in the mind of a buyer. Any problem they got now will certainly be fixed between now and 5 years from now. So you have no problem getting tenant buyers to move in there if their credit sucks right now. And frankly, you can do it a lot less than 5 years. If you're paying retail price for it, and you're putting an axe tenant buyer in it, you can negotiate that deal as low as 2 years if you want to, if you have to. You with me? Because now the buyer can go qualify and buy this house anytime they want during that 2-year period because there's not more owed on it than it's worth. Yo? Yo. All right?